I know we have a few more folks are walking in, but we do have most of our folks here. Chairman Taylor, you want to come up and get ready to present, if you will. Yeah. And this is the ad valorem tax subcommittee for all those curious. I'll tell you what, give me 1 second and they'll, that way at least we'll have folks walking in front of us. All right, we have a few bills today, and I think all of these bills are, if I'm not mistaken, Mr. Chairman, these are first time we've heard these bills. First hearing on all these bills. So with that, Madam Chair, if you want to go ahead and begin.
I bring you today House Bill 1120. We're working off of LC 442543. This is a bill that talks about our property taxes. And basically how it works is that when someone appeals an increase in their taxes, once that's going through that review, they then freeze any increases for 3 years. When this was originally brought out, it's my understanding that it was meant for homeowners. And it's now being used for lots of other things, and it's hurting our county tax bases as well as those that are homeowners. This is a benefit that was meant for them. What this bill does says that the freeze for 3 years only applies to those with homestead exemption or owner occupied. It's a very simple bill. The freezing would only apply to those categories.
Madam Chair, we've had several other bills, but one of the topics our discussions that's come around this, and especially around the freeze, is, and you may want to answer this question in regards to your bill. What happens should someone go and appeal the bill, but yet no changes in the value? In other words, they don't get it. Their appeal is unsuccessful. What happens in that case?
It's my understanding it's still frozen for 3 years.
Okay.
And with this bill, that would only apply to those that are homestead exemption. Currently, it freezes it for the 3 years.
Okay. 17.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you, Madam, for bringing this bill. Certainly want to make sure that everybody's property taxes are taken care of, but I just wanted to see what your feeling was with the idea of if nothing changed, but the value is still frozen for 3 years, wouldn't a bill like this, or wouldn't this process also encourage appealing every 3 years, and then your property taxes are frozen every time? Is that correct?
That's what's happening right now. They appeal it, and particularly rental homes, then it's almost become gaming the system. They appeal it every year, and then it holds it for 3 years. So you're going to always be 3 years behind. This will change it for just applying to homeowners and homeowners that are occupying their home.
Right, but follow up if I may, but you're saying it still would be that 3-year freeze for any homeowner that made the appeal.
For those that are
homestead exemption.
Right, that's all. It just would not refer to like commercial property, the rental properties.
Follow up. So what's this? And I'm sorry I didn't see this. I just ran in here. But What's to stop a homeowner from appealing every 3 years and then,
They may. That's what's happening right now with the commercial end, and it's having a major effect on the county taxes when the commercials are doing it. Homeowners don't tend to appeal quite as often as the commercial entities do. Yes, a homeowner could do that, but right now we're seeing it really affecting the rental properties.
okay, thank you, Madam Chair. I like the bill. I was just making some
you.
clarification questions.
All right, thank you. Any other members? All right, I think we have a sign-up sheet. Dante Handel, ACCG. We'll hear from him. Madam Chair, if you will, we may have a question or two, but we'll hear from them. Yeah.
Well, good afternoon, Chairman Knight, members of the committee. My name is Dante Handel. I'm with ACCG, and I'm here today to speak in support of this bill. So we appreciate and commend Chairwoman Taylor for bringing this, and we think it would definitely help address that problem. So currently the way that 3-year lock works is if the taxpayer appeals their value, if they submit written evidence, or they attend the hearing, whether they win or lose, that value locks for the 2 following years. This bill would limit it so that if it is a residential property that's appealed, if it is a homesteaded property that's owner occupied, then they would get the 3-year lock. If it is not homestead, not owner occupied, but is a residential property, they would not be eligible for that 3-year lock. So that really gets towards a lot of those properties that are owned by private investors, a lot of out-of-state businesses that are shifting their tax burden to our citizens, and I think that's a large part of what we're trying to address here. And I'd be glad to answer any questions.
All right. I know, Chairman Washburn, you had a question, didn't you? And I may have missed you on that first round. I just saw this. You wave? All right. Who's 16? All right.
Thank you. I appreciate you being here to talk about the bill. Just for clarification, because obviously I hadn't been in the legislature that long to know why the 3-year freeze was ever instituted in the first place. And so my question to you is, I would have to assume that there were some tax assessors that were being pretty egregious in assessing values, and that's how this 3-year deal happened in the first place. Is that a fair assumption?
Yes, sir. I think there were some concerns that there were a handful of assessors' offices who were coming back and raising the value significantly after the taxpayer appealed. And I think the feeling was that it was punitive, that they were coming after the taxpayer because they'd appealed.
Okay. So with that being said, if that's the reason the protection's in there in the first place, I understand maybe the pendulum swinging the other way on commercial property, but also, I mean, what's to stop it from happening? You know, what's to stop it from happening again? You know what I'm saying? To go back down that same road if it's, you know, because it's easy to attack a commercial business or a commercial property owner versus a homestead because you got to look at that person in the face at church, etc. But I mean, if the 3-year freeze was put into place to stop that behavior, then how is us removing it going to not bring that behavior back? I just feel like we're circling around.
So I appreciate the question. I'd say that when this was originally put into law, the intent was to be taxpayer-friendly, to protect the taxpayer. And I think what we're seeing is that it shifted so much that it's become taxpayer-unfriendly, where a lot of large entities are taking advantage of this loophole, and it's shifting additional burden onto the taxpayer, and especially shifting a lot of burden onto residential properties. And this bill as written would address, so it wouldn't cover apartments because those would be commercial properties, but this would cover either a build-to-rent subdivision or some other arrangement where the person is renting out a house.
I'm going to ask the forgiveness of the committee. I've got to step away. I'm going to ask Chairman Carson to come up and take the helm.
Okay, if you don't mind, we have a couple more questions.
Sir.
I apologize, I don't know what order these came in. Chairman Washburn.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just to be sure I'm understanding this correctly, so you're allowing homestead property owners to still have the benefit of this, but you're planning by this bill to take away from the farmers, the timber growers, the shopping center owners, the apartment complexes, any other non-homestead property, you're going to take that opportunity away from them to appeal.
No, sir, Chairman Washburn. This would not address how those property owners are able to appeal, and it would not affect their ability to get the lock. This would only apply to residential property that is non-homesteaded and non-owner occupied.
Well, I'm follow up, Mr. Chairman. So you're applying this only to someone who owns a single-family rental house but does not live in it?
Who owns the home and lives in it.
No, I understand that part, but you're taking away the opportunity for the freeze from those non-homestead property owners, but you're not doing that with farmland, timberland, shopping centers, and everything else?
Yes, sir, that's accurate.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Chairman Martin, you had a question.
Yeah, we've talked about this before, and so I'm going to try to do this in the form of a question. If you have somebody that I just don't understand how you look at this and treat people that unequally. I mean, if the explain to me how the fact that somebody has a homestead or not. Let's say they have two homes. Many people have that for different reasons. They keep an old family home and a farm, and they live somewhere else. And you're telling on one of them they're both reassessed in a certain way, and they both go to do it, and one of them gets a freeze and one of them doesn't. It could be in the same county. Where's the equity? Where's the treatment of those two appeals? Just because we sat here today and said we think that's okay. How does that work? How do I find that to work in my world?
Well, thank you for the question, Chairman Martin. What I would say is that the current statute, 48.5.299C, is unequal as it's currently applied. I think it kind of blows up uniformity, and really it's creating a tremendous benefit for those taxpayers who are savvy enough to take advantage of the existing loophole, which is why we're seeing a lot of folks.
Well, first of all, respectfully, it's not a loophole. It's in the law. Everybody knows it. I mean, it's not a loophole. That's what we put in the statute.
So I would say that the folks who are more likely to have attorneys and accountants, and those folks who are more aware of that than the average citizen, are more likely to take advantage of it. And so they are using it exponentially more likely than taxpayers with lower value properties and taxpayers who don't have those types of folks on their staff or those folks that they can consult with.
That's what you would say.
Yes, sir.
I mean, again, and I don't mean this, I don't want to be argumentative about it. You've been great to work with on a number of things here. We just, it's not a surprise to you. You and I happen to be on different sides of this. If it's something that needs to happen, it seems like it needs to happen for everyone. If it doesn't need to happen, it doesn't need to happen for anyone. And we had a bill earlier, another bill going through. I think Chairman Washburn may have it that does something with the 3-year freeze. And I worry a little bit about that. Isn't it true that's going to push the BOE to not make a reduction? Because if they make a reduction, then they get to freeze it for 2 years. I mean, you were at the hearings. Maybe, Mr. Chairman, I'll just wait, and if we get to a place, I'll do this under debate, because I know there's a good intent behind this. I just worry about that we're leaving some people. We're taking rights away from the taxpayer, is basically what I believe we're doing.
Thank you for
Isn't that
that,
true?
Mr. Chairman. I just want to encourage everybody. Again, this is a first hearing. Coming to you back in just a second. Representative Wiedauer, had you up next.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So, in your words, and correct me if I'm wrong, this was put in place, the 3-year freeze was put in place because there were some egregious situations and we were protecting the taxpayer. Now we're saying the pendulum has swung and these guys are just so savvy that they're just gaming the system, or loophole as you use the words. So we're just going to take it all away.
I mean, yes.
So that's, I mean, that's about as extreme as it gets. Is I think moderation might be somewhere on our in our motto here. So didn't know if maybe there's somewhere we should be in between.
Yeah, I mean, in my opinion, it has shifted back the other way, where a lot of entities are taking advantage of the other taxpayers in their community and the local governments. And I mean, the county commissioners are concerned about that tax shift that we've seen result from the 299C statute as it's currently applied. So we would support any restricting of that statute to try and rein that back in.
To follow up, if I may, Mr. Chairman, and so
Go
also,
ahead.
thank you. So if the only people that are utilizing this are these so savvy investors, are they not just going to inundate the counties and cities with yearly appeals? Because if it's not successful, they're just going to keep coming pounding you guys over and over again. Has there been any consideration for how much time that's going to take the county?
So what we're seeing now is a lot of those groups, they will file the appeal, get the lock, and then right as the lock's about to come off, they file the appeal the next year that they can. So it moves up like a step function.
Sure. And again, I'm not agreeing with that either. I'm just suggesting that putting 3 years in to protect the taxpayer and then now completely removing it certainly doesn't seem like we're necessarily getting to the root of the problem.
Thank you. Thank you very much. We have one more question, and again, I want to stress that this is a first hearing. Chairman Carpenter.
Thank you, Chairman. So would another solution be, and this is what we did in our community, because we've got a really interesting dilemma where we have a lot of industry and they pay the lion's share, and we had a shift in valuations because they didn't evaluate the commercial and industrial, and they did the residential. So there was a shift to the residential base of our taxes, and so we went in and actually increased our homestead exemption. And wouldn't that not be a way to protect them and still provide protect the homeowner like we're seeing? And then if you need to raise revenue, you just increase the mill rates, but the homesteader is still protected from that increase of the millage rate without actually creating two systems.
So thank you for the question. I'd say that definitely would help those homesteaded property owners if you were to increase the homestead exemption. I think the issue that we're trying to get at here is anytime a taxpayer locks their property under the 299C statute, because it's keeping their value artificially low, it's shifting some of the tax burden to every other taxpayer in that community. So every other taxpayer in the county.
Okay, we have one more question, then I'm going to ask the author to wrap up very quickly. Representative Fry.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. It'd be helpful if you could compile some data of the commercial appeals, and so we could really see what we're looking at. I mean, if it's a major problem, we definitely want to figure out a way to help, and we understand what you're going through, but data would help out in those decisions. Thank you.
I appreciate that. I'll be glad to try and track down some data. We were doing a little bit of a study of this issue over the summer. Paulding County was able to show us where only 8% of the locked properties in Paulding were homesteaded properties. So those other 92% are commercial entities, industrial, ag, or they could be any of these residential non-homesteaded properties, which is what this bill is specifically speaking to.
That's all the questions. I appreciate that. Thank you, Dante. I just wanted to stress that, again, this is first hearing. Chairman Lady Taylor, I'm assuming you're available to answer questions from the committee. Great. Thank you so much. All right. Okay, next bill is House Bill 1069. Representative Cannon. There you go. Mic should be on.
Pretty intense questioning. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Good afternoon, members of the committee. I'm looking at HB 1069 LC 500692. It's a pretty simple bill. It's the Department of Georgia Forestry Commission bill. Its purpose is to provide the State Forestry Commission with timber harvest tax records that are reported to county tax assessors via the PT 38T form, officially known as the Report of Timber Sale or Harvest. Currently, our State Forestry Commission does not have access to these records. So on the PT 238T form, in the lower left-hand corner, there is a confidentiality provision that states price reports shall not be revealed to any person other than authorized officials. The bill simply adds reports shall not be revealed to any person other than authorized officials and the State Forestry Commission upon request. So while the change, this is primarily geared towards timber transaction investigations with the State Forestry Commission. It would help ensure that harvest totals reported to the county tax assessor match the actual payments made to the landowner for the timber as well as the amount harvested. So again, pretty straightforward proposal. Spoken with ACCG, which might not be a good thing now, but I've spoken with them. They don't.
It's a fair point, Mr.
They don't have any issues with it. We've talked to the appraisers; they don't have any issues with it. Georgia Forestry Association, the trade association, is good with it. I've got someone here to testify about the bill from the Forestry Commission, if the chairman would allow it. But again, pretty simple bill, and I would urge. I appreciate the chance to present it to the committee. Thank you.
Thank you. Any questions for the author? Quickly. Okay. Chairman Martin.
So can you go into, on lines 12 and 13 of the bill, it says shall not be revealed to any person other than tax officials. What are the civil or criminal penalties if that's revealed?
I have to get back to you on that, Mr. Chairman.
Do you often come to committee with a bill where you have to get back with people?
No. No, sir.
Chairman Blackman? You have anything? I'm just kidding you, sir.
I know.
I appreciate you. Chairman Blackman.
Everybody has the first time in front of Ways and Means, Mr. Chairman.
Yeah. Where's Dante? He can get back up here if he wants to.
Give it to Dante. He'll present anything. No, I appreciate the gentleman for bringing it. That was my job today.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Appreciate it.
Okay, I believe we have one person that signed up to speak, but I don't have a name. Anybody to speak on House Bill? Okay, come on up quickly if you don't mind. He does. If you don't mind stating your,
for those kind of questions.
if you don't mind stating your name, sir.
Brian Clavier, I'm the Chief of Law Enforcement for the State Forestry Commission. And of course, we support the bill and appreciate the bill and y'all's consideration. 10 years ago, we were given the authority to enforce the forestry laws. This is actually an area we found a little bit where we've had trouble, is getting the PT 283T forms, which do track how much timber was harvested by merchantable timber. The law just specifies we can't get it. We can go through subpoena or court order, but of course that takes time and resources and some level of proof. So this would just expedite the ability for us to compare the records given to the landowner, the meal tickets, and these records, and make sure that everything's in line more quickly to determine if we need to go any further. And just to keep it short, so I'll leave it there unless y'all have any questions.
Thank you. You have one. You do have one question, Chairman Dickey.
Thank you. So I just want to make the committee aware. I think I know this brand new walking in here with this, but when I sell timber, I know what it is, and then the buyer also reports what they're purchasing from me to the local tax assessor. And so I think y'all are trying to, Georgia Forestry is trying to match those up and make sure those match, that nobody does not pay the tax, or possibly the landowner could not even, if he doesn't live there, might even know his timber had been cut or something. So this is a good bill that would match up those records to make sure everybody's doing as they're supposed to, is what I think.
Yes, sir. And there's, I think, an estimated 8,000 harvests a year. We get average about 80 complaints, so you're talking about a small portion. And some of those counties are even unfamiliar that there was a harvest. Of course, the enforcement of ad valorem would still be the sheriff's office and tax assessor, but we could bring to them anything that we see that's inaccurate with what was paid or harvested.
Thank you for the bill.
Okay, I think you have one other question, very quickly. Representative Buckner?
This is not lighting up, so I don't know if it's on or not, but I know that the commission's also responsible for like carbon credit program and sequestration and that kind of thing. Would that kind of information be at all used for that and how you calculate what's been cut and what's not been cut and what's been growing? Will that be used in any other way than for potential fraud of them not paying their tax bill or the person cutting the timber not paying the landowner what the tickets say?
Not that I'm aware of it. The intent was for us to be able to do it for investigations. So I'm not aware of any other intent
And
there.
those are the two types investigations that you'll be using them for then, is the tickets for the landowner between the logger and then the payment to the county.
Correct, yes. Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Great. Any other questions from the committee on 1069?
I'll make one comment for Rep. Buckner. I believe that's going to be between the landowner and the carbon credit company you contract with.
They've got a program with the commission that they're helping with that, to set
Right.
that up, so I just was wondering if this was getting ready for that.
Not that I'm aware.
Okay, I think that's all. Thank you for the author. Thank you very much. We're going to move on to House Resolution 1041. Representative Washburn, here he is.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee. I'm here to present House Resolution 1041, which is LC 280615. I want to read the first four lines to open my comments. This proposes an amendment to the Constitution so as to provide that the governing authority of any county or consolidated government shall be authorized to adopt an alternative method of appraisal and assessment of real property. I read that because I want to stress from the start that this is a constitutional amendment that would give the counties and consolidated governments the option to do this, the option to do it. No one is trying to force that on them. The proposal is that the existing tax assessments in the counties would be frozen and would not rise again, and that the future values of all property in the county, and that is homestead and all other properties, the values would be established by the purchase price of that property. And it would not change again until it was purchased again. And we'll talk about that, I'm sure, some more here in a minute. Now, there is a provision that if somebody improved that property by more than $50,000, the value would be adjusted. But the idea here is that the purest form of market value is what the market produces. I've been in the real estate business 48 years, and I was privileged to teach real estate licensing at the Middle Georgia, what was then Macon State College, for 20 years. And whenever I get to the situation about teaching about property taxes, you find out quickly the average citizen who pays those taxes understands very little about that process. This is market value. Is not what I think it's worth. It's not what you think it's worth. It's not what an appraiser thinks it's worth. It's not what a board of tax assessors thinks it's worth. It is worth what a buyer with the money in hand will step forward and pay for it. This is a suggestion to give counties the alternatives to let the marketplace set the value on those properties. Most real estate is transferred regularly. There are some cases where properties are held for a long, long time. But we believe, and other proponents of this proposal believe, that if they implemented this plan, the digest would rise steadily, producing the revenue needed for local governments to do what they do. And so I may have left something out of the proposal, but that's it in a nutshell, and I'd be happy to entertain any question.
Thank you. Thank you, Representative Washburn. Chairman Blackman.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Now, this novel idea came up during your committee hearings, is that correct?
That is correct,
Representative
Mr.
Washburn?
Chairman. Thank you for
And I know
mentioning
you
that.
worked really hard to try to, simplicity and simplification's been kind of at the foremost. So, friendly question here, just out of curiosity, what would your assessors do? What would be, what would they spend their time doing in the event that we were to approve something of such nature, which I think is a very, very intriguing and novel idea.
Well, first of all, Mr. Chairman, I'd have to say they wouldn't be happy about it because I think it reduces what they do considerably because we let the marketplace set the values. I don't know that I know exactly what the answer is. There's still some role there for them. And again, I want to stress that this is an option. Now, one thing I did forget to mention that's a benefit of this, we believe the appeals process would almost go away because if somebody has paid the price for a piece of real estate, whether it's homestead or otherwise, I don't think they're going to come argue that it's not worth what they paid for it for taxation purposes. So we think one of the benefits is greatly reduced appeals and that process. We spent a lot of time here today talking about that process, and we spend a lot of time talking about it. One of the things that came out of our study committee was the need for more transparency and the need for our taxpayers to understand the system better. And we believe the great benefits of this is that it will reduce the appeals process considerably. The other thing I should point out is the bill provides that after 5 years, if the citizens of the county did not like that by a referendum vote, they could undo this plan. But it does give them 5 years to do that.
Well, thank you for allowing us to continue the conversation on this.
Thank you.
Okay, I had next up Chairman Newton.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just a quick question. I know in some areas of the state, especially when people were thinking that interest rates were about to go up, there was some time in the post-COVID where prices went up pretty dramatically. And now that interest rates are higher, they're not really worth really what they paid for them in some areas, or they certainly couldn't sell them easily. The market might not bear that. Other than spending $50,000 to improve it so you get a new appraisal, is there any way to protect someone who paid a lot when interest rates were low, but nobody's out there willing to buy it for 80% of that now? What would be their mechanism to get back to the appraised value?
Well, that's a good question, Mr. Chairman. This plan is that market value sets the assessed value, and it is true that it's a two-edged sword, that if your value drops considerably, this plan would leave that value in place. The marketplace sets the value and continues to.
Okay, I'm going to take one more question. Representative Fry.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Chairman Washburn, this is a great bill. I love it. I wish that we could mandate it because I feel like I'm the one in the room that gets the calls from people whose properties are assessed because somebody paid X amount of dollars for a house and then blew it up and blew it out and made it a 3,000 square foot house from a 900 square foot house, and then they're stuck in this 1970s house that hadn't been remodeled in 50 years, and they're getting killed with these what I call lazy assessment when they're doing blanket assessment. So I'm not really worried about where the assessor is going to work after this bill passes, and I would love to see this a mandate across the state. Thank you very much for bringing this bill.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Thank you to the author. We have one person signed up, Dante Handel with ACCG. Is Dante? We're really, really short on time. Are you just for or against, or can you sum it up in like 30 seconds for us? 20 maybe.
Sure. Be as brief as I can. Dante Handel with
Please.
ACCG. We're opposed to the bill. We have a lot of concerns about it, especially as it pertains to the commercial properties. I think there'd be a good bit of room for gaming of the system. I know there's language in the resolution about arm's length transactions, but one question I'd have would be, who knows that transaction is arm's length? But it'd be very likely that the values, go up over time. And my question for y'all on the committee would be, would you sell your home for the same amount today that you bought it for back in the day. And I think that's a large part of our concerns.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Okay. This was a first hearing only. Go ahead.
I just think it's fair to point out, I'm somewhat surprised at ACCG opposing us on this bill. But I will say, I don't understand why they don't want to give their counties the option. That's what this bill proposes, is a constitutional amendment to give them the option to do that. And so I just wanted to close with that. And I realize it's here and only. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Dale. This option. Okay. Any other further business for the committee? Okay. Ad valorem subcommittee is adjourned. We're going to go straight into the other committee. Thank you.
Good afternoon. Welcome to the Income Tax Subcommittee of the Ways and Means Committee. In the interest of time today, I'm going to call on Chairman Jaspers, who's going to introduce, I believe it's House Bill 403. Chairman Jaspers.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I was going to make some comment. This is my first time before the Ways and Means Committee, and I don't know if it's as hot up there as it is out here, getting ready to present a bill for the first time. But I have House Bill 403. You have a sub in your folder. I have to admit, I don't have the number with me because I don't have the ones and twos. I gave one of them away yesterday. I had to have it redone. But what House Bill 403 does is allow for more Georgians, families, to utilize geothermal technology. If you don't know what that is, that's using the Earth's energy to heat your home. Your Earth's temperature is very consistent, 63 to 65 degrees, and it allows you, if you install this, to save significantly on your energy bill, all the while reducing the electric demand that we know is becoming important in our state. Geothermal heat pumps can save up to 70% on cooling, heating, and hot water. I've seen these in person in my community. They work well. I've got a neighbor, Miss Judy, that uses one, and a friend that uses one in his pond. I feel this bill will greatly grow if we do this. This will allow for a 25% state income tax credit on the installation expenses for residential geothermal system. However, the credit shall be only applied over a period of 5 years and not exceed $5,000 for any taxable year. And additionally, as we like to do, it does have a 5-year sunset. After seeing it firsthand, I strongly feel this bill is good for Georgia. It helps put working families and homeowners to a lower energy cost level. It puts money back in their pockets to spend elsewhere. It grows jobs across our state, positively impacts the HVAC systems, installers, water well diggers and plumbers, and loop contracting businesses. Geothermal systems require a significant amount of work. Whether they're drilled or they're lateral, that means moving across the ground or in a pond. It takes a significantly number more people to install one. It is proven to reduce peak load on our electrical grid in the summer and winter and establish a very even baseline power usage. I believe it's time for Georgia to do the same. And I also have with me Tucker Green, who, if he'd come up, could probably answer the technical questions about this bill and additionally say something.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee. Appreciate the opportunity to talk about this bill with you. I also have Austin Northcutt here with me today.
Go ahead and introduce yourself, please.
Yes, sir. Tucker Green. I represent the Conditioned Air Association of Georgia as well as the Georgia Association of Groundwater Professionals. And I have Austin Northcutt with me here today, who represents Water Furnace, which is the largest geothermal manufacturer in the United States. And I'm not sure, Chairman, how much time we'll have. I know you have a busy agenda,
Let's move forward.
I may defer my time to Austin.
I stand corrected. Did you have a question of the author of the bill?
It was for the, yes.
For the chairman?
Maybe either one of them.
I'm
Kind of a technical question.
okay. I'm just going to recognize Dr. Newton. I failed to ask if any members of the committee had a question for you,
Sorry,
Chairman
well,
Jasper.
it may have deferred over to Tucker, is that right? I know we've talked a lot about, we've been hearing in the paper and in the news a lot about the demands on our electrical grid. How much more efficient are these than just the normal heat pump that we have? Would they decrease your power bills and therefore that's decreasing the demand on the system?
Great question. So geothermal is the most energy efficient way you can heat or cool your home. They estimate on average when you combine heating, cooling, and hot water, it can save on average about 70% for a utility bill.
70?
70.
Okay, thank you.
And if you want to go ahead.
If I may, Mr. Chairman, since to save time, I'm going to ask Austin Northcutt to come up and give a few remarks,
Sure,
if that's okay,
please.
and I'll just be here for questions, if
Sure.
that's all right.
Austin, again, if you just introduce yourself and say who you represent. And
my name is Austin Northcutt. I represent the state of Georgia for Water Furnace, as Tucker said. We're a geothermal manufacturer, the largest residential manufacturer in the U.S. We do make all of our stuff in America, Fort Wayne, Indiana. We have, as Chairman Jasper said, our systems on install typically take 2 to 3 times the manpower and labor. That's because we touch either a well driller or an excavating company as well as a heat and air company and sometimes an additional looping contractor. We feel a solution that not only will put more money into the pockets of hardworking Georgians by reducing their utility bills, but also a technology that will help reduce that peak demand. And with that, I'll open it up for questions.
any questions from members of the committee? Chairman Dickey.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Great systems. Been very aware of them for many, many years. I've had some neighbors that have had them. But what is how much more is an initial upfront cost? And that's the reason for this bill, I think. How much more is it than traditional heat pump?
So we typically see 2 to 3x on a traditional air source heat pump.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions? Oh, wait a minute. Is it? Recognize Chairman Carpenter.
Thank you, Chairman. So you're saying 3x. So you're saying for say a 3,000 square foot house, you're talking 30 grand, 40 grand. Is that kind of?
So was the number you said 3,000 square foot
Yeah,
house?
yeah, 2,500.
So you'd be looking maybe 7 tons on that. You typically need 2 different systems for that. You'd be looking, I'd say, at a minimum of 30 grand for each of those 2 systems.
Okay.
So combined, you'd be looking somewhere in the 60 to 80,000 range, maybe at the extreme high end on that install.
Okay, and then on the federal side, what's the federal tax credit on it?
There's a 30% federal.
Okay.
Is there any other questions? No questions from members of the committee? All right. Well, thank you for presenting the bill today.
Okay, thank you for the opportunity.
Now we'll move on to hear Chairman Newton's bill, House Bill 971. No, this has already been heard. This bill's already been heard and had a lot of discussion in the first meeting. So we'll just let for the members of the audience, especially anybody who might be watching online, Chairman Newton, if you just explain the bill, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. This is House Bill 971. It's a substitute after feedback from the committee. It's LC 500739S. This is a bill to encourage 2 activities. One is safe firearm handling, and the other is secure firearm storage. A little bit of background on it. So many individuals, in particular since the defund the police movement, the difficulty in our law enforcement retention and recruiting, frankly, an increase in gang activities, violent gang activities. Because of this, many citizens have obtained or considering obtaining a firearm to better protect themselves or their children and families. Many of these may not have grown up in a family with hunting, or they may not have grown up around handling a firearm. HB 971 allows these individuals, these citizens, to use a portion, $300, of their state income tax obligation to obtain one of two things: an instructional course in safe firearm handling. There's a definition of that in the bill. And second, to purchase a safe storage device so that their firearm can be both readily accessible but also safe from a child's use, or especially from criminal theft. Organized gangs stealing firearms from homes and vehicles has been, if we've talked to any of our sheriffs, we know it's a tremendous law enforcement and safety problem. And homicide is often by gang-related activities is the most significant majority of pediatric firearm deaths. So 2 changes to the original bill. We did change the original bill where it said 2 years to change the requirement to keep your record keeping for 2 years to 3 years after the committee and DOR recognized that. That's the standard length of time that you need to keep receipts for any kind of a tax credit. And separately, due to that gang violence and theft and the fact that we have 2 activities in this bill that you can do both, sometimes it's about $150 for each. So it is still maxed out as $300 per taxpayer. But because it's 2, there was an effort after the subcommittee first hearing to raise this from $5 million to $10 million a year so that we can get this safety out there, in particular with the threats that are out there, and both to law enforcement and through gang-related activities. So we think this will be a good way to encourage people to if they feel the need to protect themselves to obtain a firearm and they're not comfortable with it, or they didn't grow up that way, they can get their safe training, and then they can have a secure place to storage. So I appreciate the subcommittee getting back and influencing this bill. I know many of you have heard it before, and I appreciate that effort to make it better. Glad to answer any questions, Mr. Chairman.
Recognize Chairman Blackman.
You ready for us to move this one forward?
I think it's a great bill that would do some real good in Georgia.
I think we move the chairman. I move that we move the chairman's bill.
Is that a do pass?
Got a
motion?
Got a motion and a second.
Oh.
Hearing no further discussion, all in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, same sign.
Thank you, subcommittee.
All right. We will move on to House Bill 1167. Representative Townsend.
Thank you, Chairman Williamson. This is a continuation of what you guys passed a few years ago, an excellent bill, law that's now in place, the Peach Education Tax Credit. What we're trying to do is really enhance the effectiveness of it. It's been a long term. It's been effective since 2018, of course, when you first passed it, and now it's in the hands of the Georgia Foundation for Public Education since 2022. I'm reading 1167, but it's a substitute in front of you, sponsored by Chairman Wiedauer. We changed the date at the end of the bill, if you notice, the implementation date to January 1st on Department of Revenue's recommendation. It's LC 5007405. And basically, I'm going to give you the highlights of the bill in front of you. It's not very deep, as you can tell. Basically, we're raising the tax credits to cap in Georgia to $20 million. Currently, it's at $5 million for the state of Georgia. Individuals go from $1,000 to $2,500, where you can actually have the tax credit. The joint filing goes from $2,500 to $5,000. Corporations such as a S Corps or LLC Corps can actually increase from $25,000 to $10,000 to really support the innovations that's happening now across the state of Georgia in many communities. I'll read a couple other revisions, but first I want to tell you a little about some of the innovations. Down the coast where I come from, Brunswick and St. Simons, we have a place called Golden Alice College and Career Academy. A very innovative place. I actually worked there for 10 years, so I'm a little biased about that. But one of the things they did was, we're big into workforce development, such as all career academies are. And what this does allows places like that, or school systems or school programs, not just career academies, to really do things they normally couldn't do with your regular money from either FTE money or property taxes or from the general fund. For example, they use this extra money to start a new heavy machinery program down in Brunswick. We have many uses for it down there. Of course, the ports are right there. A lot of projects in that area, economic development. So this is a heavy machinery pathway. We couldn't get over the hurdle without this infusion of money. Just like we started one this year for dental assisting. Goes, wait a second, how's dental assisting, innovative or whatever else? Well, if you can do things with the program that other programs can't do or begin it because of that extra money, that's what makes it nice. One of the things these programs have done in the past is anytime you can use private money instead of the regular taxpayer money, such as we talked about earlier, FTE money or property taxes, things like that, then that school program really go to the next level. 4C Academy in Albany, Georgia, Southwest Georgia, I'll keep it quick, Mr. Chair, I promise. They've started this unique garden out there growing things, and they've really ramped up the entrepreneurship program with the local farmers market, participating in that, using high-tech ag principles there. Chris Hatcher's done an amazing job there. They've done other things, of course, with the hospital system. Again, using this extra money that normally wouldn't be there. Not enough in Perkins to cover it, but they have this. Couple revisions also we have. If you look on lines 25 to 27, it eliminated the priority for low-performance schools. You can read it. Basically, we did away with that because after first few years, that's not a concern anymore. This program's for all zip codes, guys. This is for any kid. And also lines 61 through 63, it's a scholarship program for all individuals. It doesn't go specifically to one kid, so that's why we want to eliminate those lines. Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Are there any questions from members of the committee? I want to stress this is a first hearing
Yes, sir.
only. It's a pretty straightforward bill,
Yes, sir.
Representative Townsend. Are there any questions from members of the committee? Got Representative Carson, or Chairman Carson.
Thank you, Representative. Back to what you said on lines 61 through 63.
Yes, sir.
So if my child is in some sort of, not in joint enrollment, but a vocational program in his senior year or her senior year of high school, I can contribute to that program because I would be getting rid of this preemption in line 61 to 63.
It depends on the innovative application you did through the Georgia Public Policy Foundation. It has to be innovative. It can't just be, hey, let's extend an after-school program, something like that. It's going to have to be innovative and approved in advance. So there's no guarantee you would get the money for that. You would go through the process to make sure the tax credit's there, but when you donate to that program, you're not going to share unless they've already submitted the application. You know what that innovative program is. That's when they decide. It's for all the kids.
That's just, if I may, Mr. Chair, that's just a pretty significant departure from our policy in regard to not having a tax credit for contributions to a program that your child's already going to. That's my only question.
Yes, sir. And I do have Paige Pushkin here from the foundation if anybody has questions from her, how it's been run the past few years.
And one more. So the cap on this is $5 million per year. Can you tell me about how many credits were subscribed and funded in the last, say, 2-3 years or what have you?
My understanding this past year came a little bit short of $5 million. It's come short each time. Now we have 25 partners that are willing to go further it through that LLC or through the S Corporation, and there's interest in other places across the state, like CEC in Newnan, Georgia, one of the most innovative career academies across the state, who works with advanced manufacturing. They're jumping in as well, so that's why we see the need there.
Thank you.
Any other questions from members of the committee? Hearing none, thanks again for the presentation.
Yes, sir.
That was the first hearing, and look forward to seeing you the next time.
Yes, sir. Appreciate your consideration.
Next, we'll have the first hearing of House Bill 1180. Chairman Carpenter.
Right. Maybe this is why we got a room full of people today, guys. How we doing today?
I noticed no one that left.
Yeah, everybody's kind of interested in this one. So House Bill 1180 is an update to the film tax credit in the state of Georgia. Came out of a summer-long study on tax credits that members of this committee were involved in. Obviously, it's a restatement of the fact that the state of Georgia is firmly committed to film and firmly committed to the taxpayers of Georgia. So I'll just go over the changes that you will see, but it basically boils down to just a couple of issues. The first being you're going to raise the minimum spend to $1 million on a single state certified production. And the purpose of this was to make sure that we were attracting the big films and the big productions that this film credit was established for, making sure that we weren't doing commercials, etc., because we felt like there was some abuse in that area. So this would clarify there would be $1 million spend. There's also going to be a change in the 10% uplift. Instead of just the peach at the end of the film, we have added more criteria to make sure that we're focusing on what we want to see out of film in the state of Georgia. And so now instead of just the peach, it would be 4 of 9 criterias. I'll go through those real quick for you guys. The first one is making sure that 50% of the crew in the film are Georgia residents. The second one is 50% of the vendors for the goods and services are Georgia vendors. The third one is at least a $30 million production expenditure in the state. Obviously, big productions. The fourth is 50% of the photography will occur in one or more of the rural counties around the state, as defined in that code section. I think that relates to DCA. The fifth one is 50% of the days are in photography days are in studio facilities in this state, but not limited to obviously sound stages, backlots, etc., and that the company makes capital improvements to those studio facilities. The next one would be, the sixth one would be the long term, that the studio, the production goes into an agreement for long term with a studio in our state, i.e. what we've seen up on the north side and with Gray TV. The next one is that Georgia vendors, that they utilize 20% of their post-production expenditures in the state of Georgia, or also visual effects expenditure. Obviously, there's been a lot of talk about investing in post-production. We've had plenty of bills, and this would just solidify our commitment to make sure that post-production occurs in the state of Georgia. The next one is obviously in working with the Workforce Development and the Georgia Film Academy. And then the final one is the uplift for the peach or something that the Department of Economic develops that is a marketing opportunity for the state and for film. You'll have to get 4 of 9 of those to get the 10% uplift. And I think that it just further illustrates what we want to see as a body for film growing and continue to growing in the state of Georgia. I'm going to flip back through to the back page, and I think this is the part that's got everybody really excited. And then we are actually looking to put a cap on 2.5% of the revenue estimate from the corresponding fiscal year on transferability of credits. And so what that does basically says, listen, we've got to be good stewards of the taxpayers' money. As the state of Georgia continues to grow and our budget grows, as more businesses are successful and more individuals move into our state, this will continue to grow. Film will continue to grow as well, and we will continue to invest in it. Obviously, cap is a tough word. We can change it to whatever you want to change it to, but at the end of the day, we want to continue to see that we are protecting taxpayers, but also allowing this industry to continue to thrive in our state. I think current estimates would put this around $900 million on the transferability of credits. Just a little bit of feedback on this. So you will, as it's written currently, if let's say $1 billion is applied for and the cap's $900 million, this would prorate that at 90%, and then the 10% would roll into the next fiscal year. So obviously, there's people here to talk about the bill. I'd love to hear testimony on it. I think that piece is something that needs mechanics, and we're going to work on as we go through this process. And I can tell you, just with conversations with Chairman Blackman and other members of the committee, that we're firmly committed to making sure the mechanics of this bill work for the industry and work for the taxpayers. So without any further, I'll take questions.
Any members of the committee have questions for the chairman? All right. Wait a minute. I'm sorry. Who's three? Oh, Chairman Wiedauer has a question. I'm sorry.
Thank you, Chairman. So the way this is currently being defined, basically the 10% uplift's not going to help out anything outside. It's going to be based on a population of a certain community, not.
No, that's just one factor. So there's 9 factors.
Right.
You only have to hit 4 out of 9. So I think that there's definitely some people want to have conversations on that piece, and I'm obviously willing to have those conversations, because I think more than anything, we just want to make sure that we're sharing the revenue of this industry with the entire state and not just the metro 60-mile radius. So what that looks like to make people happy, obviously, we're willing to have those conversations.
Representative Buckner.
So my question's along those same lines of the code section on line 60 refers to rural, which is great. Rural Georgia wants to have the film companies there, but the hub cities near there want to have them come visit as well. So I was hoping we might be able to look at that language and see if we could let it be hub cities outside of metro and rural areas together.
So, we've been in conversations with obviously Columbus, obviously Augusta. Spoke with the representatives from there, as well as the representatives from Valdosta. So obviously there's some conversations that are being had, and willing to have those conversations. But the biggest thing for me, and as I got into this role originally, was great industry, super exciting for all our young kids, but also how do we share that wealth with the state?
Right. Thank you.
Yep. It's Chairman Dickey.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and I appreciate your work on this. I really appreciate the work of Chairman Blackman and all of this. It's really, in my opinion, due, and thank you for work. If you want to make me happy with this bill, you'll ensure that the uplift peach is a peach. and don't deviate from that.
That sounds like a plan to me.
That'll get my vote. Thank you.
Thank you, Chairman. Appreciate you. And appreciate your peaches, baby.
Spoke about a peach farmer. So, any further questions for the chairman from the committee? If not, I think we have some people signed up to speak. All right, representative number 15.
Should I pass or should I'm happy to ask a question. Thank you, Mr. Chairman, for bringing this. And I think most people know this is, a lot of what I do on a daily basis, so I'll be recusing on the vote. But I just wanted to point out, I have had a kind of discussion with the chairman. I haven't reached out to Chairman Carpenter yet, and I do apologize for that. I think two of the biggest concerns, well, you'll probably hear more, but two of the biggest concerns is line 165 in regard to a corresponding fiscal year. So this is a complicated process. So what is your goal in regard to, maybe not the exact wording here, or Chairman Carpenter, but so if I have expenditures in a prior year for a production, let's say it's a big movie production studio, right? And they incur production expenses in 23 and 24, and that gets certified by Department of Revenue in 24. And let's say that number is 100 million of expenditures, and the initial 20% is 20 million. Now, how is that proration going to work for that 20 million? How is that going to work for that 20 million if we don't know what the full year is based on how much is certified by Department of Revenue?
Sure, I understand the issues with the mechanics of it.
It's not an application process. It's credits get approved during the year.
Sure, right. So the way I envision this is we set a revenue estimate for July, and that revenue estimate would set that 2.5 in January 1, so it's running calendar year for everybody else. That's what I envisioned. Obviously, if you've got those expenditures, that whatever were not available to be utilized that year would roll into the following year.
So corresponding fiscal year would be, if it's 2024 calendar year approved by DOR, because that's the benchmark under House Bill, I think it's 1160. Okay. I'm just going to pass on my question.
Just to understand that whole section is a work in progress.
Okay.
And we're obviously going to work with DOR. We're going to work with the industry folks to make sure that we get it correct.
We have
Okay,
a
thanks.
CPA and a finance major in the weeds right there. I think we need to look at the larger picture.
As long as everybody gets their money, everybody's happy, I think, at the end of the day, right? And films get made and jobs get filled.
We'd like to recognize Kelsey Moore. If you come to the podium, introduce yourself and tell us who you're with, please.
Unless you're a ninja. That could be our first film, The Ninja.
That was kind of you, though. Good afternoon. Thank you to the committee for allowing me to speak to you today. My name is Kelsey Moore. I'm the executive director of the Georgia Screen Entertainment Coalition. We are an affiliate of the Georgia Chamber of Commerce, and we serve as the unified voice for the Georgia-based businesses in driving our state's successful film industry. So we represent all 16 major Georgia studios, as well as the crew, vendors, educational institutions, film commissions, and the industry infrastructure businesses. So Georgia is consistently ranked the #1 state for business, and a major contributor to that success is our state's predictable and stable tax structure. That's particularly important for our state's film industry, which employs nearly 60,000 Georgians and had an economic impact of $8.55 billion on the state in 2022. Our film incentive program has worked as intended. It's created a new industry that is the envy of states and countries around the world. We've created high-paying jobs for Georgians, and we've spurred significant economic impact and investment into communities and small businesses statewide. So we appreciate the measured approach that the General Assembly has taken over the last year to really thoughtfully consider any potential changes to this successful economic development policy. House Bill 1180 does provide a groundwork for a plan for long-term sustainability for the film tax incentive. And while Representative or Chairman Carpenter mentioned, we do have some concerns about the bill languages and some of the provisions that may impact our state's ability to remain competitive for film production. However, we are committed to working with the bill sponsors and committee members on the specifics of those issues to address and ensure better accountability, transparency, and a continued high return for Georgia's taxpayers. So GSEC is here to serve as a resource to this committee and to all of the elected officials and policymakers as you discuss our successful film tax incentive. Thank you for allowing me a few minutes, and we look forward to continuing to work together.
Thank you, Kelsey. Next, we have signed up to speak Danny Kenzo.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee. I will be brief. My name is Danny Canso. I'm with the Georgia Budget and Policy Institute. First, I want to recognize the work that went into this legislation, the work of Chairman Blackman and the members of the committee to undertake the joint tax review, to give a comprehensive look at our tax code, identify some really strong pieces of legislation and a framework to move forward. I'm here to speak in favor of this legislation. We appreciate the deliberative process that went into crafting these provisions, recognize that there's more work to be done on this bill, but really do appreciate y'all putting this measure forward, see it as a really strong step in the right direction to continue our state's strong business environment, but also provide security for our taxpayers and enact a very fiscally responsible path moving forward to ensure that we know the liabilities that we'll be facing and the state will always be in a position to meet those and to continue to provide for Georgians. So we appreciate the work that's gone into this bill, the work of the chairman, the members of the committee in reviewing the tax code and the legislation that's resulted, and definitely stand ready to continue to work as it moves through the legislative process.
Thank you, Mr. Canso. Appreciate the testimony, and we'll just call back up the author of the bill or ask if any members of the committee have any further questions for the author of the bill, for Chairman Carpenter. Okay. Recognize Representative Fry.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Chairman Carpenter, thanks for bringing this up. I really appreciate this bill. One question I have, and you may not be able to answer it, but I just want to make that maybe someone in the audience has the answer. You know, if we change the credit from 500,000 threshold to $1 million, how many of the smaller production companies are we actually cutting out by stretching that up is one of the questions I'd like to see, because I definitely want to offer opportunities for the smaller filmmakers to take advantage of these tax credits, because they seem to be the ones that might need the money, the opportunities the most. And I've seen a bunch of films be made at lower budgets. So data on the difference between the 500,000 and the $1 million, are we losing a bunch of film production companies, or is that negligible and that's why that decision was made, is my question.
Yeah, I think the biggest reason for that move was to make sure that we were getting job creators and real bigger projects. I think there were there'd been some stories and some issues of smaller commercial type videos, etc., music videos, etc., and we were making sure that we were clarifying that this needed to be 1 million single production. You may lose some smaller guys, but I think most at this stage of the game, most everything's $1 million. You know, inflation's just like, in film, just like anything else. So,
and thank you, Mr. Chair. Follow up, if I may. It'd be great to get some data on those points exactly from the economic development group department, if we could get that to see, just to make sure. Like, obviously, if you're doing a bunch of commercials, 5 commercials at 100,000 each, yeah, we don't need to count that. But making sure that we're not cutting off the productivity and the creativity of those who are trying to do the right thing.
I feel you.
Thank you, sir.
That's why it's first hearing only. Thank you, Representative Fry. Any other questions from members of the committee? We have a sign-up list, and did it get lost?
Oh yeah, there's a ton
All
of
right,
people.
we're running short on time, but Matt, if you've got a client that needs to make a quick, yeah, please. I believe they came a long way. I'm sorry that we didn't spot that you hadn't signed up, but we have another pretty important measure we need to hear.
Won't take long. Matt Campbell.
Sure.
I have the pleasure of being the executive director of the Coastal Entertainment Alliance, which is a group of film entertainment industry bringing more opportunity to the coast, and not just Savannah, but down Bryan, Glenn, McIntosh, Camden, etc. Also, I'm helping out my friends in the Georgia Regional Film and Entertainment Alliance, which is a lot of the communities outside of the metro Atlanta area. One of them is here today, Ms. Honey Korngold. She is a producer from South Georgia Studios in Brooks County, and making a big impact down in South Georgia and all across with workforce development, and they got something beautiful in the making. But Ms. Honey, if you'd come up and share a few words.
Ms. Honey, if you just introduce yourself and
Yes.
tell us where you're from.
Yes, I'm Honey Korngold. I'm from South Georgia. I'm a producer and I'm an owner of South Georgia Studios. It's a 112-acre development, $40 million soundstage production campus in South Georgia, Brooks County. We are very much excited about this, and thank you very much for the consideration for the rural areas. It means a lot to us. It's a big deal. And many of the things that were concerns of ours have been already mentioned in terms of the definition of rural, because there's a lot of communities that are working very diligently to build, to level the playing field and to build this industry in our community. So just very quickly, one of the things that's the biggest concern for us as a rural area is that of that additional uplift for the Peach, the additional 10%, being able to shoot in that rural area, making that an option. One of the things that's a challenge for a production company is that when they come to a rural area, it costs more. There's additional costs. So typically it can be anywhere of up to 15% for production. So for a producer to choose that as an option to get the uplift, it has an associated cost. So that's one of the things that we'd like to really, encourage maybe taking a look at, because we'd love to have a level playing field with the other regions in the state to be able to bring film to our areas as well. So thank you for the consideration, and thank you for all you're doing.
And when you say South Georgia, Brooks County is as south as you can get in Georgia.
It is. It is. It's right on that Florida line, which is an opportunity to also bring lots of business from Florida for production, because there currently is no film tax incentive in the state of Florida, and there probably never will be.
Thank you for your
Thank you.
testimony, and I believe that is the final person signed up for, or this, speaking of this measure. Next, we're going to move on to House Bill 1182. You can present from there, unless you have somebody who's going to come testify with you. No. Okay.
All right, thank you, Mr. Chairman. It's House Bill 1182, LC 500689, and much like the previous bill we just heard, this is looking to make a few slight changes to one of our tax credit programs to ensure that we're getting the best outcomes for the taxpayers of Georgia. This is the low-income housing tax credit's what it's been called in the past, and that's one of the changes here. We're changing first on line 16, redefining affordable housing project. It had previously been called a qualified Georgia project. It will now be called an affordable housing project. Same definition as before, we're just changing the name. And what this is going to do is it's now going to take the credit and reduce it to 80% of the federal housing tax credit allowed. However, there will be a 20% uplift for 4 different criteria. If it's a targeted community project, that targeted community project will get the 100% of the federal housing tax credit. And the criteria for a targeted community project are simply if it is located in a rural area, or reserves or prioritizes the majority of its units for seniors or veterans, provides access to stable and high-frequency transportation, or consists primarily of a rehabilitation or renovation. That's really the only change. There is another change over on line 76 on page 4 that it just creates some transparency and allows for the records associated with the code section to be subject to Article 4 of Chapter 18 of Title 50 relating to open records. And that's essentially all the changes, Mr. Chairman, and I will be glad to answer any questions.
Do we have any questions from members of the committee? And again, to the audience, this is first hearing only on this bill. Representative Buckner, we're going to have to ask you to, can you use microphone 8? That one works.
Okay, thank you. I saw where we were going from 100% to 80%, and that confused me when we've got such a housing problem. Can you help me understand that?
I can.
We've got such a shortage.
Yeah, there is a shortage, but there's still an opportunity to have 100%. We're just trying to make that directed more where we need it. A lot of the problem are in areas, rural areas, or areas where there's a lot of, big production facilities being made in more rural parts of the state. And so this is a way to try to ensure that we're getting the most proper outcome, the most directed outcome that we want to get for this, and incentivize people more by having that 100% opportunity.
So may I follow up?
Sure.
Would this be directed like close to huge economic development opportunities that are coming into certain parts of our state where there's no housing for the workers that are going to be there soon?
Well, there's 4 different criteria, and it only has to meet one of those.
Okay.
So, for instance, let's say on C, provides access to stable, high-frequency transportation. If a project wanted to go in, say, somewhere near the Hyundai Meta plant, and they wanted to provide or get with a partner and provide busing or transportation to and from work there, that would qualify for the 100% for that. And that's just one example.
So could something be added about it being a quality education area, for example, so that families would have a place to go in these rural areas and there's a good education center? Or
I mean, anything can be added if people, if people want to agree to add it.
I'll get with
That's something
you.
we can talk about.
Yeah, we do.
Yep.
If you don't mind.
Okay.
Thank you.
Questions? Mr. Chairman. Chairman Martin, what are you, 10?
Yes, sir.
Serious question for the gentleman. I mean, the jobs that are coming with the Hyundai plant down there, the salaries that we're going to be paid to those, would housing units that lived in by the folks that have those jobs qualify for this type of credit? I mean, I look at this affordable housing product means a qualified low-income housing product. Surely we're not incentivizing Hyundai to bring jobs that people would work at that would then qualify for low-income housing.
No, and that was just one example, but not all of those jobs are going to be high paying. There will be some that are not.
There better be a lot.
Well, that was an example.
There better be. I mean, all joking aside, there better be quite a lot based on the reason that project was brought. Right. Yeah. Okay. That's, I don't see those two things.
It was an example. It was an example.
Okay. Fair enough. Yeah. I just so to follow up with that and the question about the credit. Mm-hmm. The idea with the credit is to keep the housing affordable to those that live there. Mm-hmm. And so the way the credit's being changed, I mean, I guess what I'm getting to on the credit is there a relation between the credit being given and the amount being charged to the people that live there. Do we have some more information about that relative to that we continue to give this credit to make low-income housing available, not just to enrich those that are building it?
I think I'm trying to understand.
I'm just trying to. We're talking about building this, and maybe some people are going to speak to it, but that to make sure that the credit is going to make the housing more affordable, not just to the constructor of the project.
Gotcha. Yeah, and I think that's part of the transparency piece that was put in here as well with the Open Records Act, but that's certainly the idea behind it, is to try to create affordable housing. And with these, and I apologize for my Hyundai example.
No,
it may have been a bad example, but that's
fair enough. I understand.
There's a transportation component, and that's one people have had a lot of questions about, is the transportation component, and that was just an example that if they locate somewhere and they can partner with someone to provide transportation to and for work, to try to keep cars off the road and provide them with transportation services. That's just one of the uplift aspects.
Mr. Chairman, the last thing I would just add, and I'll get it out to the committee, I ran across a nice story this weekend published about the housing crisis. I don't know that we can actually incentivize all the housing we need. For the past 14 years, there's been less housing built than is needed in this country, and no amount of subsidization is going to do that.
Thank you for the remarks, Chairman Martin. We'll recognize the Chairman. Chairman, what's your last name?
You can call me. You can call me anything you want to. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I know there's some other testimony that we're going to have on this, so a lot of questions are going to be answered. But I would mention that DCA already provides a point structure and system for these developments, and they're very much aligned with some of the things that we're doing with the credit here in order to hit that 100%. We also had testimony during the off session regarding the audits and the range as to who would how many of these would get built with or without the state matching credit to the federal credit. And so we tried to hit a reasonable number there, and it was much higher than the audit that the state auditors did, reflecting what would have been built regardless of this state credit. So I think what we're doing for housing here in Georgia is something that other states are copying, and I think we want to obviously continue to inspire those kinds of developments. But at the same time, You look at seniors who don't have the ability necessarily when they're on a fixed income to actually, get anything more, and inflation is hitting them just as hard as it is everybody else. Our veterans are something that have given back to this country. You look at rural areas that have a higher cost factor when these developments go in place, and it could go on, transportation being a consideration again of DCA. But I know I see Mr. Tony here. He's going to speak, and others are going to speak, and we'll hear more along those lines. And I think maybe some of the questions will get answered as we proceed through the testimony. If not, then we'll take some more of these. We do have another subcommittee meeting that we want to try to get done. Thank you.
Chairman Stevens, did you have a quick?
Very quick one, if you will. I want to make sure that we understand this is not subsidized housing. This is lowering the cost so that we can get affordable housing for these folks to come in. Subsidized housing might imply that we're actually paying some of the rent or some of their costs. This has nothing to do with that. So is that not correct?
Yes, sir.
Wait a minute. I'm going to lose control. We have so many people signed up to speak. I want you to respond as not subsidized. Okay. All right. I believe we have some folks signed up to speak, and numerous people. Jet Tony. Jet, if you'll come to the microphone, tell us who you are, who you represent, and educate us.
Good afternoon, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee. Jet Tony, representing the Georgia Affordable Housing Coalition. Coalition members include the developers who compete for an award of the state and federal low-income housing tax credits. Also in that coalition are all of the related industries: architects, engineers, builders, infrastructure developers, attorneys, and managers of the facilities. The Georgia Low-Income Housing Tax Credit Program, State Housing Tax Credit Program as it's called now, is nationally regarded. Chairman Blackman said it. It is so true. Other states look at the way DCA administers the program in Georgia and tries to emulate that. Every state is a little bit different. Some states have other means of providing funding and financing for the projects, but generally speaking, I think most states would emulate Georgia's. It's a very effective program. It's produced tens of thousands of residential units for seniors and low-income workers. Now, having said that, we realize that the legislature has a responsibility to assure that a program of this extent is satisfying the needs of the state, both geographically and with the age populations, and for the rehabilitation of facilities, and there are certainly a number of good examples of that. So, having said that, we understand the reason for this legislation, and Chairman Crow, I want to apologize to you and Chairman Williamson for not having come to you between now and last week when this was introduced. But frankly, I didn't want to come talk to you till I had a chance to visit this legislation with the developers that I represent. I have 4 or 5 recommendations that I believe are certainly worthy of consideration, and I can either voice those now, or I can meet with you and Chairman Williamson sometime in the next few days and show you these, whichever you prefer, Chairman Williamson.
Well, in the interest of time, we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 more people signed up to speak, and you know us well, and our door's always open to talk to you and anyone else in the room for that matter. But if you could get with us offline and educate each one of the members of the committee as you see fit, that would help us on the time frame this afternoon.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
All right, we'd like to recognize Elizabeth Apley and if you'll come to the microphone, tell us who you are and who you're with, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. My name is Elizabeth Apley. I'm an attorney and public policy advocate, and I'm here representing the Georgia Supportive Housing Association, Georgia Advancing Communities Together, Enterprise Community Partners, 9 to 5 Georgia, Presbyterians for a Better Georgia, and House ATL. As Jet said, the state low-income housing tax credit program is an important and excellent program. These are the only state funds that Georgia invests in the creation or preservation of affordable housing. And so it's incredibly important at this time when we are in a housing crisis at every level. And you can read the Department of Community Affairs' recent housing needs assessment that documents that we have failed to produce housing to keep up with the growth in our population, the growth in our households since 2013. And so this vast unmet need impacts most harshly, as the department says, on those at the bottom of the economic ladder. And so we have a dramatic shortage of low and moderate income housing. And at this time, we need to be increasing our investment in affordable housing, not reducing it. We know that over 43% of Georgia renters are spending more than 30% of household income on housing. And this is the HUD definition of affordability. And when you're spending more than 30% of household income, it means that you're constantly having to make choices between putting food on the table and paying the rent, getting medical care, repairing your car, and the like. So we are proposing, we're generally supportive. I just recently saw the suggested changes that the Georgia Affordable Housing Coalition is offering, and I believe that my clients are basically in support of those changes as well. We would ask you to consider, please, uplifting or adding to the group of priorities that are uplifted. These three areas that we suggest are consistent with what the Department of Community Affairs prioritizes in the QAP process. We urge you to consider adding to these targeted priorities quality education areas, projects in quality education areas. We know it's critically important for children to grow up in neighborhoods of opportunity, and quality schools are a key indicator of that equality, getting them out of areas of high poverty, where school quality is low, where health quality is poor, where access to food and other amenities is limited. Second, we urge you to consider prioritizing in those targeted projects, projects that reserve 20% or more of units for people at or below 50% of area median income. So we know that almost 60% of Georgia renters are at or below 50%. These are the ones most in need. It also encompasses those people who are homeless, people with disabilities. And finally, Mr. Chairman, if you will, we would urge you to consider this issue of locating within commuting distance of economic development projects. And the research shows that in those communities that the chairman asked about, Hyundai and the like, they're talking about average incomes of about $60,000. That means half are below and half are above. So many are in the population that would need and for which there is no access in those communities now.
Well, some of these recommendations you just mentioned, are they is that some of the same topics that Jet Tony's going to show us as well?
Some of them are, and we'll be sharing.
We look forward to looking at them, all of them, and fleshing through them.
Yes.
We just have 3 more people that are signed up. It's been 4 more people that are signed up to talk, and
yes,
we just need to give us the 30,000 foot and look forward to seeing the details.
Yes, sir.
Happy to meet with you.
Thank you so much.
All right, I'd like to recognize John. Is it John Toppin, or Toppin? Toppin, sorry.
Thank you. My name is John Toppin. I'm
give
with
us the 30,000 foot as well.
Yeah,
please.
Tapestry Development Group, a developer based in DeKalb County. I just, as a developer and a practitioner who benefits from this tax credit program, I just have been very concerned about the cuts, and have members of the associations that Ms. Apley and Mr. Tony represent. I'm just concerned about, Georgia's been a model throughout the Southeast, and is one of the best states that we work in, and consistently has been in my 20 years here. And I'm just concerned about the implications of a cut at this time when insurance is going through the roof, interest rates are really high, inflation, labor supply is still very, very challenging in our industry right now. So I just wanted to just implore you all, if there's a way to not cut this at all, to consider that, but if to work with us to minimize this cut so we can continue to maintain the high quality. I do think the taxpayers of Georgia want to continue to see these developments be the absolute highest quality in their neighborhoods, and I think maintaining their credit would be the way to do that. Thank you.
Thank you. That's excellent presentation. Short and accurate. So next we call Mariel Reisner Sively. Hi.
Thank you all for the opportunity to speak to you. I just want to reference what the senator said.
Tell us who you with, please.
Oh, Mariel Risner Sively. I work for St. Vincent de Paul, Georgia. I'm on the board of House ATL and the board of the Georgia Supportive Housing Association. So like you all, I'm getting the calls every week from folks who don't have a place to live. They're living in the car. They've got kids in the car. I get these calls just the same as you do. I also get them from the other demographics of your constituents. If the state low-income housing tax credit is cut from 100% to 80%, there are units of housing that are not going to be made. It's just not going to happen. The deal's not going to get done. To Mr. Toppin's point, things are so expensive right now. Insurance is skyrocketing. Building materials are skyrocketing. And this is going to affect very vulnerable people. We know that the highest poverty in Georgia is children and people with disabilities. That's just what it is. And those are the people who aren't going to be able to get into this quality, affordable housing if it's not developed because the numbers aren't there. So I would also encourage you to scale back the cut from 100% to 80%. It's just a lot at this time. And this is the only funding that's creating these quality, affordable units. It's the only funding that's rehabbing them. So every dollar that you take away, it doesn't get replaced from another pot of money. There's nothing else out there that's making this. And when people call you and they call me and they say, I don't have a place to go, they really do not have a place to go. It's creating homelessness and it's creating a survival system in motels, which is also homelessness. So thank you for listening. I really appreciate your time and the work that you're doing.
Thank you. James Alexander, please. Good afternoon. It was soon to be evening.
Hi, I'm James Alexander. I'm the president of Mercy Housing Southeast. Mercy Housing is an organization, a nonprofit organization that was founded about 40 years ago by Sisters of Mercy. We also create affordable housing like John's organization and many other organizations, really about providing housing to the least of those in terms of income. And I can't take it to 30,000 feet, but I will say that this morning I was just working with somebody looking for housing. They're going to lose their housing at the end of the month. And a lot of these developments that are funded by the state low-income housing tax credit have a waiting list of a year, year and a half, 2 years. And that's not just in the city. It is in rural areas. It's in suburban areas. And that's the same for our housing. You know, we build and own housing. We have waiting lists. I can't help my friend because we don't have enough housing that we're producing. So don't have 30,000 foot, but that's my 1 foot. And I think I share a lot of the uplifts that we've heard about quality education areas where there's job growth and also units for people who are earning below 50% of area and median income. Thank you.
It's an excellent overview. Thank you. Thank you for the work you're doing. Sarah Patino?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'm Sarah Patnod. I'm the Development Director for the Decatur Housing Authority. So in addition to all of the other work that we do at the Decatur Housing Authority, we are also developers of our own properties. That's my role. So that's why I'm here to talk to you today about this proposed change to the tax credits. Just to echo what other people have said, at the Decatur Housing Authority, we currently have 12,000 people on a wait list for 400 housing units. To give you a sense of the scale of the need, right now we need more housing than ever. The need is only getting larger. So this is not the time to be making changes that would reduce the amount of housing we can build. But I do want to point out that the bill is currently written is limiting the development of housing that directly benefits our workforce in our fast-growing suburban areas around our state. So as currently written, this is the working households in areas including Cobb, Macon, Dalton, Athens, Augusta. Anywhere that's rural but not served by public transit is getting lost in your targeted areas. So this is including desirable areas that have great opportunity to uplift your working families, including many of your districts. These are areas that have good jobs, they have good schools, and they have good opportunity for families that are feeling the crunch of our current housing markets. So I want to echo Elizabeth Apley's suggestion of proposing to expand the list of these targeted community projects to include these 3 new categories. The first is projects near quality education areas. And this is supporting housing development that will really end the cycle of poverty through education and stability. Again, I work for this in the city of Decatur, where we have had a 100% high school graduation rate for 13 of the last 14 years. And that's due to this housing being located in the city of Decatur with its fantastic schools. So making sure that these projects are able to be in areas of high educational opportunity. Also, expanding that targeted list to include projects that have 20% or more units dedicated to that 50% AMI. These are more deeply affordable units. And to give you a sense of what that means, for families in Cobb and Gwinnett County, you're talking about a $50,000 household, making about $50,000 a year. That's about $45,000 near Savannah. That's about $40,000 near Athens and Augusta. And it's about $35,000 near Macon or Dalton or Brunswick. So these are families that are in need. They are being captured. These are jobs that you're getting in your communities. These are people who already live there that are feeling the crunch of the housing markets and really need to be supported. And the final category that I suggest adding to your targeted list is these projects near economic development areas, because you do need to ensure that the employers who are attracting new jobs can have a workforce that lives in the community. That's the thing that makes a community, is when people live, work, and play there. So ensuring that as you're building new economic opportunity, you are allowing people to live in that same area. So I just want to echo again, this housing crunch that we're all feeling, it's only getting worse, and we really have to invest in more affordable housing right now. So thank you so much for your time.
Thank you. I think all of our speakers did exactly what we were looking for. Good presentations, and look forward to follow-up discussions. Any more questions from members of the committee? Any comments for the author? All right. Hearing none, meetings, Income Tax Subcommittee Ways and Means is adjourned.
Okay.
I had moved my stuff down here, so.
Well, good afternoon, everyone. We're going to go ahead and call this meeting of the subcommittee meeting of tax revision. Go ahead and get this meeting started. I know the meeting before was quite lengthy, and we appreciate everyone staying around waiting, but we're going to go ahead and get started. And Mr. Chairman, if you don't mind, I would like to start this meeting off with a word of prayer. And I'm going to ask if Chairman Stevens, will he be so kind to lead us in a word of prayer, please?
Absolutely. Most kind and gracious Heavenly Father, lead us and guide us in your will and your direction. Place your hand on us. All these things we ask. Amen.
Thank you. Thank you. We have 4 bills that we're going to be hearing this afternoon, and they are all hearings. And we're going to begin with House Bill 284 with Chair Lady Camp. It's yours.
All right. Hear me?
Yes, we got you. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Chairwoman Stinson. May I present from here, or would you like for me to go to the podium?
Will you be so kind and go to the podium?
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you.
Is that yours? No. Thank you, committee. I'm here today to present House Bill 284, which is LC 520236. And this was a measure that was brought last year. We did have a committee hearing in another subcommittee of Ways and Means, but we are happy to come back so this committee would be able to hear everything in depth. This bill is focused on cost-sharing organizations. We all know individuals who are members of MediShare, Christian Healthcare Ministry, Samaritan's Purse, and these organizations cater not only to ministerial or clergy, but also to many individuals who want to be a part of a like-minded organization. Simply put, this bill allows what a taxpayer in a taxable year was not able to deduct on a federal return, they will be able to claim it on their Georgia income tax return. There is a fiscal note on this bill that was prepared last year, and those numbers range based on the number of individuals who take advantage of this potential deduction. But I'm open for any questions, and I do believe we have someone that does want to speak on the bill.
Thank you. Caught me off guard there for a minute. Keep swapping around. A couple questions. What was the average on that fiscal note?
Let me grab it. I'll let someone look at it. Hold on just a moment. Let me grab it.
Okay, sorry.
It was a crowded room earlier, and I was not able to retrieve it. And I'm happy to prepare copies. This is something that did come through the committee. For this year, the low estimate was, or in 2025, the low estimate was 4.3 million. The high estimate was 7.1 million. And going forward 3 years, the high estimate was 9.1, and the low estimate is 5.5 million.
Okay. And I know there were some discussions earlier with some folks that I've talked to that were concerned that this is not insurance, but it would be in the same category as insurance. And I'm not against the entities. In fact, I participated in one of the MediShare plans for a while, as you and I are both self-employed. It can be a big help, but any concerns about that? Have you know, it's being treated as insurance when it's not insurance?
Well, and this would not be treated as insurance. We make contributions, all of us, I'm sure, make contributions to a number of organizations which are deductible when we file our income tax. This certainly is not insurance. We're not trying to say in any meets and measures that this is insurance, but this is something that people do use. They do make contributions which help others. So in that respect, we would like for it to be looked at as a type of donation.
Thank you. I did have one question. How do people, individuals, how clear is the disclaimer, if you will, that this is not insurance, or this is not, we don't have in-network discounts and pricing or whatever else? How clear is that when someone?
It is very clear. There was a time, my husband, his company was bought out in 2017, and he retired. When he retired, unfortunately, they looked at our income based on what it was 2 minutes ago when he was employed. And our insurance was going to run us about $2,500 a month for our family with no subsidies. So that's a lot, especially since my husband, who was a high wage earner, was suddenly retired. So at that point in time, we joined Christian Healthcare Ministries, and it was reiterated over and over on every piece of paper. This is a cost-sharing ministry. And it was a privilege for me when, from time to time, they'd send little cards where maybe someone has had a catastrophic illness or injury, and they said, if you could, provide a love offering for this individual. It was an honor to be able to share when I could to help someone in that situation. But my daughter also had a claim while we were members of this healthcare sharing organization, and it ended up being about a $12,000 deal, and it was very evident in all of the information. I negotiated with the hospital and negotiated the total cost down to around $5,500, and at that point in time, the cost share ministry was able to help us with that, to pay that. But it's very evident. It was 100% my responsibility as the person involved in this to take full responsibility for the bill. And because you say when you go to the hospital, you are private pay.
Chairman Blackman.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Chair Lady Camp. Now on this, is there, I'm looking at, ministry, organization, participants, members, who typically, who qualifies for this? What is your...
Anyone can qualify for it. It's primarily, in my area, it's a lot of people who work in churches. Christ Chapel, which is a church in my district. There are many members of call-sharing organizations that work at the church, and they're employees of the church, and they do this for religious and philosophical reasons, and also because this is the most economical way to have something. And so this is kind of what they do. But there are a lot of people. You just heard Representative Crow mention at some point in time his family has been involved. My family was involved in one for a brief period when there was a lot of uncertainty. And it was a blessing for our family to have that because, once again, when someone retires, no one really plans to shell out $2,500 a month in medical insurance. People do it, and I'm not knocking that, but this is just another option.
So, if I may follow up, Mr. Chairman, just akin to a self-insured plan almost, without it being insurance. Let me just qualify.
Well, no, because based on the donations, your plan, whatever happens to you, might not be covered. They're fully clear on that. It's based on the money that's available, based on donations and monthly little payments to be a part of the organization, and they make it abundantly clear they're not guaranteed, nor are you 100% ever to be guaranteed that they're going to pay anything.
Okay, thank you, Chairman. Thank you.
One question, the annual audit there on line 45, just curious, I know a lot of our public insurance companies are required to spend at least 85% on medical benefit. It's obviously calculated different ways, with no more than 15% for profit and overhead and administrative cost. Is there a similar reports on some of the health, or maybe one of the people going to testify could tell us, are there similar targets or requirements or expectations?
Well, I believe it being the organization that it is under the type of funding that they give, I believe there's parameters around that, but I cannot answer definitely on that. So I believe Joel Noble has signed up to speak. So whenever that point comes,
good time. All right,
come on up.
Thank you, Madam Chair.
All right, thank you.
Thank you for being here with us, Ms. Noble. Just go and introduce yourself and who you're with, and proceed.
All right. My name is Joel Noble. I'm with Samaritan Ministries International, which is one of the 3 largest healthcare sharing ministries, and we're based in Peoria, Illinois. We've been operating for around 29 years. We also helped form the Alliance of Healthcare Sharing Ministries, which is the trade association, And we've also now been accredited by the Healthcare Sharing Accreditation Board last year and again just last month for a second year. So there is accreditation that's been going on for a couple years now. So I can maybe answer some of the...
About the audit?
Yeah. So on the audit, so part of our accreditation does look at that audit. For us, we were sharing 89.7% was going to shares, 10.3 was going to administration. And so the accreditation looks at that type of medical cost ratio that's the same as insurance, and they're looking at having something close to insurance, like that 80-20. But for us, it was 89.7 was going towards other members.
I'm assuming you wouldn't have the expense of negotiating networks and in-network contracts and negotiating with drug manufacturers and rebates and everything else. There is an administrative expense. Is that maybe why yours is?
So with us, we do some of that in-house, but a lot of it is just members asking for discounts. By and large, our members, unfortunately, are probably paying more for their health care costs than insurance folks, because a lot of times they're getting in that charge master category if they're not working on it. We give them tools like Healthcare Blue Book so they can see fair prices. We're trying to move away from a discount type model to a fair price model, because a discount model, if you go to one provider and they give you 50% discount, but that cost is 500 times higher than the neighbor, it's that discounts, even though it seems generous, is not as good as the next facility.
Chairman Williamson.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. You might have mentioned this, but how many lives are covered in your plan?
Sure. So at Samaritan, we have about 9,000 households here in Georgia, about 260,000 lives nationwide. Among the national ministries, there's probably about 50,000 individual lives here in Georgia.
So, and no organization such as yours, because it's not insurance, and I get that, but you have to have a volume of people. You have to let the theory of large numbers work to have that spread of risk. And obviously, you have to advertise, not only your administrative staff, but you have to advertise. And I'm sure that's not inexpensive. So I would defend the fact that if you're running at 89% efficiency, dollars going back to pay claims, that's pretty lean operation to be able to grow it to get the scale you have to have. I would commend you on that.
Yeah. And to go back to the question about whether we're insurance or not, the state of Georgia in 2011 clarified within the insurance code that we're not insurance. Representative Jay Neal ran a bill that explicitly put us outside of the insurance code. So that's existed for now 12 years in there. And part of that is a disclaimer. So we are required by Georgia law to have a disclaimer to our members that we're not insurance, that they're fully responsible for their needs. And so that's been in existence for a dozen years here in Georgia. And there's 30 other states that have similar laws clarifying that we're not insurance.
Follow-up question, Mr. Chairman, if I may. So of the 30 other states that have that disclaimer, how many of them are allowing the deduction of state income taxes? Yeah. Because if you were insurance, is it not true that you would, by operation of law, have a deductible expense?
Yeah. So the state of Missouri has had tax deduction for 18 years now, and our members deduct that every year just straight off the top. Indiana passed it last session, and it'll go into effect tax year 24, so when they file next year, so they have it right now. And then a little bit different, but Montana has what's called medical savings accounts, which allows you to shelter $10,000 per individual, $20,000 per family. And they passed a bill to allow healthcare sharing expenses to qualify as a medical expense under their MSAs, which is a sort of a tax parity in that sense, because our members will be able to use their MSAs now in Idaho. Or excuse me, from Montana.
He's all right.
Yes, sir.
So the medical savings account in these respective states, that's only for the state income taxes, correct?
That is correct.
So
All
you've
three
not-
states that I mentioned are all state income tax.
Okay.
There's no federal, right now, there's no federal benefit in healthcare sharing.
Because if the healthcare share, is it not true if health sharing ministries were eligible to participate in full-on medical savings accounts, like you can with high deductible plans through the private or through the traditional insurance market, that would be hugely beneficial if the feds would allow you to do that.
Yeah, HSAs, that would be, yes, or even
healthcare savings account.
Yeah, healthcare, or even 213D deduction, and treat it as a third category. Because right now, if you itemize, you can use your premiums or medical expenses if you itemize, and we wouldn't qualify under any of that under federal law.
Well, thank you. So on line 23, where it describes the healthcare sharing organization, and it says it's in section 501c3. So when they send money to a 501c3, that doesn't qualify for a federal tax donation?
If they made a donation directly to the ministry, we have what's called a member assistance account, which is for things that would fall outside our guidelines we shared.
Okay.
If they shared to that, if we had some kind of capital campaign or, our roof was leaking, that would all be 501c3 donation. Everything else is considered a gift would be by the IRS because it's member to member.
All right. Thank you. I don't believe there's any others signed up for that. So if so, this was a first hearing. Thank you for being here, and thank you for sharing with us. We'll go on to House Bill 895. Representative Jordan Ridley, you can come on up and let us know if there's anyone who wants to sign up to speak to your bill. I know this is a first hearing only.
Thank you, sir. So we're operating off LC 432908. It's very short and to the point. All it does is exempt gold and silver or precious metals from capital gains tax or loss. Did a fiscal note. The fiscal note said on the low side it would affect revenue by about $13 million, and on the high side about $30 million. So it's just exempting gold and silver. People invest in gold and silver because they're worried about inflation or other things, and then when they go to sell it, inflation happened, and then they're getting taxed on the inflation.
Chairman Williamson.
So, to the author, can you hear me?
Sorry.
Right, yeah. So, Representative Ridley, at the end of the day, it is a commodity, and the feds are still taxing it.
Correct. The feds still do, but this bill just says the state won't. About a dozen other states have exempted gold and silver.
The only problem, there's other more equally valuable commodities as well. Would you not agree? It could be diamonds, platinum.
Well, this is precious metal, so platinum would be included in that.
Okay. Anyhow, thank you.
Yes,
but
sir.
the only currency that I'm aware of in the that's legal tender in the United States of America is the U.S. dollar.
Correct.
And it unfortunately, it does decrease in value as inflation goes up, and only once or twice in our nation's history is it increased in value during the deflationary period. I just struggle with trying to find, basically we'd be saying that this is currency, and we only recognize the U.S. dollar as currency.
It's not, the bill doesn't recognize gold and silver as currency. It's an investment that people make, against the U.S. dollar or other currencies around the world. And like you said, they are, over time, the inflation's happening and the value's going down.
I don't argue that. Thank you.
Chairman Camp.
Thank you so much for bringing this measure. I apologize. I wasn't sure if it was going to be on or not, so if I spoke loudly, I apologize. Is what brought this measure about? What made you think about bringing this measure about? Because I know my husband collects coins.
There's a movement nationwide to do this. Like again, it's protecting against the inflation from the dollar. People are investing. And another thing, side effect of states that are doing this, Georgia already exempts gold and silver from sales tax. The states that are becoming more and more gold friendly or precious metal friendly, the national conventions are focusing on those states. So other states, like when Texas did it, they saw an increase in conventions for gold and silver. Other states that have done it have seen the same thing. So it's just, trying to help protect against inflation and see what we can do for our state.
So to follow up, is it not true that you feel this would be an economic driver for our state?
It very much possibly could.
All right, thank you.
Just a quick question for me. On the line 15 where it says in the form of bullion or coins, now a lot of coins have a value far different than their gold or precious metal value because of their rarity, age. This would also exempt the growth in the value of a numismatic value of a coin or coin collection. It would exempt that from
yes, sir.
that gain.
Yeah, because it's like you said, it is, some coins are worth more than their metal value. So it is possible that those coins that are collector's items would be exempt. But at the end of the day, the majority of your gold and silver is not the collector's coins.
Representative Kelly.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Representative, I've certainly shared, the understanding of why someone would collect gold, collect silver, collect precious metals. And I understand that when you cut taxes, that does drive economic development. But my question is, why pick and choose giving this favorable capital gains treatment to gold and silver versus other asset classes like real estate or baseball cards or any other thing that you can invest your money in? And then, if I wanted to purchase more real estate and have more housing available for our state, to employ more construction guys, why are we differentiating between asset classes?
Well, two things. The gold and silver and precious metals are already a separate asset class because they are exempt from sales tax, and barriers of entry to get into precious metals is much lower for people who are wanting to protect their assets. You can go buy silver less than $100 an ounce. I think it's around $30 to $40 an ounce right now. Like you just talked about real estate, you want to go buy an acre of land in my county, you're looking at $250,000 or more. So your barrier of entry is a lot lower with this. And again, the state already has it as a separate asset class that does get special benefits.
So it's cheaper, and we ought to make it more cheaper?
Make it cheaper, and then help those people who have it.
Thank you. All right. This has been a first hearing only, unless anyone else signed up to speak. Thank you. Thank you. And we've got certainly got some conversation going. Let's go on to House Bill 1177. Chairman Stevens. Certainly right there. Yes, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. This is a kind of a new twist of an old bill that we passed, 1999, that is a floating homestead exemption. It's one that allows folks, as long as they have a homestead exemption, to, as their assessment goes up, it allows their homestead exemption to follow it dollar for dollar, essentially keeping the value of the home at a rate that they can afford and not be taxed out of. This was brought about in Savannah, Tybee, and those areas whenever folks would move down from another area of the country, buy a $200,000 house, spend $2 million for the house, and essentially price their neighbors out of their home as they're trying to retire. This has worked over 2 decades. It's, again, one that allows folks to stay in their home and have some predictability on the taxes that they're going to pay. One of the things that we found, as you'll notice on the bill in line 44, one of the problems that we've worked out over this period of time is back in the day, and sometimes even now, a person may have their home filed under a homestead that might be in the husband's name only. As that person might pass away, that generated a new property identification number, which meant that the person left in the home, the surviving spouse, was hit with a massive increase in tax. This fixed that scenario so that surviving spouses still keep that homestead. Mr. Chairman, that's essentially it in a nutshell. The difference in what this does versus what we've had to do in years gone by. It's always been a local bill. We have about 65 taxing districts now all over the state that use this mechanism, everything from cities to counties to school boards, all across the state. It's worked. It does not hurt the counties, cities, or school boards because all the revenue, 100% of the revenue comes back the following year. And in some cases, when they have an escalation part in there, which you'll see over on line 74, it allows for at least, as the locals decide, an escalation of at least a cost of living index. So this places it on the ballot, allows the local communities to make that decision on their own instead of it being required for us as legislators to do that. That's it in a nutshell, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. You mentioned that consumer price index adjustment. Does that have to be voted on multiple times? Is it once and done, or is it?
Thank you. It's once and done. It's placed in the original request whenever they make the ballot question. Yes, it's a once and done. We'll need to do a substitute because there are some counties that have a pure floating homestead exemption, like the one we've got in Chatham, and I believe in Cobb, which copied the bill that I did in '99, and that has no inflationary index in it at all.
All right. Check and see if any questions from the committee. If not, this is, yes, go ahead, Representative Crowe.
Just more of a technical question. If there's a county that now has more of a pure homestead, like what you're talking about, and say a county that I either currently or formerly represent, depending on how you interpret the maps we just passed in December, wanted to undo that, they would need us to do that currently. Would that still be the case after this, once this passes, or would they have the ability then to undo that previous floating homestead they had?
Yes, this doesn't remove our ability to either add or subtract, and that would still have to be done as a local bill, yes.
Okay, thank you.
And so, just curious, you would end up with a situation where two fairly identical houses, identical value houses on the same street might have far different homestead exemptions. If somebody moved in 20 years ago and someone else moved in 2 years ago, both of them are worth $400,000. The homestead exemption could be dramatically different. Is that?
That is correct. And the difference is with this bill, it allows the local taxing authority to make that decision instead of us.
Thank you, sir. Any other questions from the committee? Hearing none. Thank you. And we'll go on to our final bill for today. Chairman Camp, House Bill 1185, also for a first hearing.
All right, thank you so much. Apparently, Chairman Stevens and I and Chairman Representative Washburn had much of the same mindset in regards. Mine is also a statewide homestead exemption, and we're looking at LC 442634. The way this bill differs from Chairman Stevens is that if you look over on, gracious. All right, so if you look over on lines 48, it takes into account substantial property changes. So if there's been a major addition or improvement, that would take into account. It also takes into account, let me find my lines. It goes year to year with the property value. So we would look at 24's property value. I believe it starts at line 30. So it would start in the taxable year of 2025. So it would essentially freeze property values as they are in 2025, moving forward with the consumer price index for inflationary rate. And again, very similar to the last bill we discussed, new sales would factor in to and would reset the homestead exemption. This would be a statewide constitutional amendment, and then the counties would have the ability to opt in or opt out, recognizing that local control is essential. But I think it'd provide more clarity to the counties and also to the taxpayers to understand the difference between assessments changing and millage rates changing. There seems to be a great deal of confusion when you start discussing with individuals. They'll say, my taxes went up because my assessment went up. That's not the truth. Your taxes did not go up because of taxes going up. They went up because your assessment went up. So this was the solution that that came to me after the work group on how we can address this in a way that might be more taxpayer friendly, in respect that they'll understand it. And also, Chairman Stevens lives in Chatham County. If the consumer price index went up 2.8%, his percentage of his home would go up 2.8%, mine and yours too, Chairman Newton. So that way, it would be easier for counties to understand what their tax base is looking like as far as their digest.
Thank you. Are there any questions for the author? See none on the committee. And was anyone sign up to speak? All right. If not, thank you for your presentation. That was our first hearing only. And we will, with that, we will adjourn the Ways and Means Tax Revision Subcommittee. Thank you all.